Welcome back to Home Ice with David Quinn. I'm Michelle Gingras. Whenever you win in the NHL, the next day's film session is usually pretty positive. But what about when you play one of your best all-around games of the season? Well, you can bet that that film session is particularly satisfying and noteworthy. So now it's time for Coach Quinn to take a deep dive into the highlight games of the season, one of the very best in the Rangers film room, orchestrated by Lenovo and CDW. People who get it.
So here's one of our better all-around games. Obviously, going out to the West Coast in the middle of February was a pivotal time for us in the season. And, you know, the first game of the trip was against Winnipeg, a team that we've had trouble with in my 2 years here. And, you know, probably one of our better all-around games. Here's the first goal of the game, again, off a great D zone. They get three guys high. We do a good job sniffing it out. They have a good gap. We stay on top of it. But, again, there's our F3. Kreider's in a great position. When we're being effective defensively, and when we're causing turnovers, we've got a good F3. And Buchnevich and Zibanejad get lost a little bit in the O zone. Kreider's in a great position. We've got good gap. Trouba does a great job holding the middle. We've got good back pressure coming back to the middle of the rink. And one of the things we do is we stop. You know, you see Mika stopping at the net front. You see Buchnevich low. You see Foxy retrieving back. Mika's quick, the second defender. It's one thing that we really ask our players to do. Our second defender, don't allow their guy to have time and space. Mika does a great job closing on Wheeler, and Buchnevich helps him. And it's a great play by Buchnevich, sealing off that wall so they can't make the pass to the point. And we've got the right guy, slash supporting. Kreider comes over. Bucci makes a great pass, and Kreider goes in.
It scores! What a goal by Chris Kreider!
Breakouts are so important, and it's, you know, probably one of the best parts of our game, especially with our D-core. And, you know, one of the things we do here, we do a good job getting pucks behind them. Early in the third period, it's up 3-0. We do a good job taking the wall away. One of the things we're begging our players to do is shoot pucks. Don't always look for the pretty play. Buchnevich does a good job throwing the puck on the net. He plays fast, gets to the loose puck. Mika stays at the net front. And a real big goal. You know, any momentum that Winnipeg might have thought they could have generated early in the third period, being down 3-0, we really took the wind out of their sails.
That was a great breakdown, Coach. We're now back with Steve Valiquette and head coach David Quinn, and we're joined by Rangers assistant coach Lindy Ruff. Coach Quinn, I'm going to let you have the floor first here. You two miss each other?
Absolutely. Miss Lindy big time. We had our first staff team Zoom on Tuesday, and it was good to see everybody, but Lindy and I have been in constant contact, but certainly miss Lindy and the whole staff.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a lonely time, so the catching up on Zoom has been a good thing, and seeing David's big smile is a welcoming sight.
Lindy, I have a story for you. I've actually been sitting on this question for 10 years.
Now I'm worried.
Okay, so I'm going to back up a bit here. Michael Roosevelt came into a video meeting 5 minutes late with an egg sandwich once, right? We get on the airplane. I'm sitting next to Chris Jury, and he says to me, Valley, there's no way he would have come into a meeting for Lindy Ruff 5 minutes late. He then tells me about how once Brian Campbell cracked open a power bar during one of your, video meetings, and you stopped cold and then addressed it, talking about respect, team culture, forgot about the meeting entirely, but used that moment as a teaching moment. Is that a true story? Did that happen? That's the way Chris told me. And do you remember it? I
do remember. I think that, you're engaging in a meeting for X amount of time, and, you're trying to show a clip. You're trying to make a point, and all of a sudden you hear this big crackle and a wrapper, and a guy starts chewing. And it was really just, okay, you can have your power bar, but can we wait till this meeting is over?
Yeah.
So it was Brian Campbell was a heck of a player for me, and I think it's just a small thing about just trying to be respectful and paying attention and keeping focused on the job at hand.
Sometimes those types of stories can actually end up being teachable moments. Coach Quinn, I'm actually curious, do you have any similar stories like that where something has happened and you've been able to use it as an example?
Yeah, fortunately, we haven't had that here. I think our young players, they're so young, they're scared stiff about being late for anything. So we've been very lucky in that aspect. But the year I had Jack Eichel at BU was early in the season, and we were playing an afternoon game. And we had about a 5-minute pregame meeting about an hour before the game. And about halfway through the meeting, he picks his skate up and starts looking at it. And I did all I could not to explode on him in the middle of the meeting, but I'm thinking to myself, I need him tonight. And he wouldn't have reacted too kindly to that. So we play the game. He scores the 2 goals in the third period. We win. The next day we go to Dartmouth, an afternoon game, and we're about to have our breakfast and a meeting. And I grab him before the meeting and I say to him, "Hey, Jack, congratulations. You just made the World Junior team. No surprise." And then I said, secondly, I said, "Jack, let me ask you a question." I said, if you walked into my office and I was sitting in my stall and you wanted to talk to me about something really important, and you started talking about halfway through what you were saying to me, I picked my skate up and I started looking at the blade. What would you think? He said, "Well, I would think that you didn't care about what I was talking about." I said, "That's exactly what you did in our meeting yesterday." And he was defiant. He's like, "No, I didn't do that." And I said, "Yes, you did." And we just started talking about the opportunity that, listen, you've been a great player. From here on in your career, structure is going to be important. You've got to do all the things everybody else is doing. And from that point on, the rest of the year, he was early for every meeting. He sat in the front row, and we had his undivided attention. So, to Lindy's point too, I mean, there's just different, you got to know the people that you're dealing with. You've got to understand that, maybe blowing up at him in the middle of a meeting isn't the right thing to do because you're not going to get the most out of the player. He's 18 years old. Brian Campbell's an NHL established player. So Lindy can handle that differently, which I probably, again, everything's different. And, there are teaching opportunities in most situations.
Just speaking of handling all different types of players, Lindy, you were a head coach in one place for 15 years. So you saw several cycles of teams, and I'm sure you saw a lot in your tenure when you were in Buffalo. What's the key to longevity as a coach in the NHL and just navigating this league?
Well, I think, David really just touched on it. It's player relationships. And I think in all cases, and David has done a great job in this area too. It's trying to be tough as a coach. It's trying to be demanding, but at the same time, it's being fair and it's being a human being. It's being able to have a meeting with your player. It's being able to laugh with the player. It's being able to, in the heat of a game, if you got some players that aren't going well, it's being able to, maybe skip a few shifts from even key players to say, "Listen, you guys aren't going well enough." But the next day being able to sit down with them and say, "Listen, you're a big part of this team and rely on you a lot. And these situations, we really count on you." So I think it's to last that long. Some of it is adaptability. It's the players today aren't like the players that were 20 years ago. So it's being able to handle them. It's being able to relate to them. It's been able to, you pick up your phone and you dial a player now, and a lot of times you'll get this person has a voicemail box that isn't set up yet, and you realize I got to text them. They don't even have their voicemail. So it's not getting mad at that. It's just there's different ways to communicate now, and I think that's the biggest thing: player relationships.
Lindy, in 2007, with 7.7 seconds left, Chris Drury scored a really big goal for you guys when you were in Buffalo. It was devastating for us in New York. Did you know at that time that was the turning point of the series? Looking back on it, yeah, we can say that. But what do you think that meant at that point of the series, with the series tied at that point 2-2?
No, Steve, that is really funny you bring that game up, because I watched that game 2 or 3 weeks ago. They were replaying it on MSG here in Buffalo.
Okay.
And I was texting Drew, and I said, "Drew, there's a couple situations here where I don't like your back check." and he said, he texts back to me, he goes, "Wait till the end of the game."
That's good. That's good.
So it was a huge goal for it. I mean, it was a great series, as you remember. Yeah. Really back and forth. But I think that really was a turning point, because Lundqvist was playing so well in that series. I mean, we kind of had the edge a few times in play and chances, but you guys were finding a way to get the better part of us. So, but Drew's goal was, I mean, that building just erupted.
It was insane.
Awesome stuff. Just to go back to what you're talking about quickly, Coach, about player relationships and just the importance of them. Coach Quinn has credited just the development of Tony DeAngelo a lot to you. So what have you seen from him, both just on and off the ice from a maturation standpoint, and how has this kid just continued to evolve?
Well, I think, we've all worked hard as a coaching staff to get Tony on board and get him in the right place. And for me, it's just getting to know Tony better. Tony he's got a great personality. He's got a lot of energy. He's a lot of times fiery. For me, it was in meetings with Tony, I would try to get him to channel his energy in the right direction. And a lot of his energy sometimes is just emotion from the game. It's not divisive a lot of times, but for Tony, I would ask him, put it in the right place or let something go in the game. I would rather have a player like Tony that's putting all this energy into the game and all this emotion into the game than somebody that doesn't have that energy or doesn't have that emotion. But there's times where he has to channel it. There's times where he has to take it away from where he wants to go. And, you know, sometimes some of his emotion would flow over into the officials. And those are the areas that we worked hard on trying to clean up and just stay focused and stay with it. And I think he's matured a lot. And I think our whole staff has worked hard with Tony because he's involved in every part of our game.
That's great stuff. Coach, thanks so much for joining us. We've really enjoyed having you on the show. When we return, we're going to Twitter with head coach David Quinn. Stay with us on Home Ice with David Quinn.